Federal law enforcement is facing severe backlash over its lack of preparation ahead of the January 6th riots on Capitol Hill. 5 people were killed during the assault, including a police officer. The FBI is warning more violence could take place at state capitals across the country between now and Inauguration Day. In a law enforcement bulletin posted on Wednesday, federal officials warned the success of last week's breach on the Capitol is expected to fuel more violence in the near future. In response, 20,000 National Guard troops will be deployed to Washington between now and Inauguration Day. For perspective, that is more troops on the ground in the Capitol than in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. CBS News' Natalie Brand joins me now from Capitol Hill with the latest on all this. Hi, Natalie. So as we inch closer to Inauguration Day, these threats of violence are growing at the nation's capital. What are law enforcement officials doing to ramp up security there in Washington?
Well, Tanya, I can tell you that it is a much different scene here at the Capitol compared to 1 week ago, a little more than a week ago now, when we saw that violent attack on the Capitol building. Now there are fences put in place that you cannot scale. National Guard troops guarding the Capitol, some of them armed. And this security perimeter really extends around the entire Capitol complex. In fact, to walk to get into this secure area where you need a staff or press badge identification, you have to go through a security checkpoint. We've seen Secret Service officers, law enforcement officers from all different kinds of agencies. And then you have this additional fence once you get inside the secure Capitol complex area. And again, National Guard troops, this is striking to see. If you look, there are just lines of them in and around the U.S. Capitol. We've seen those striking images of National Guard troops inside the building, forced to camp out really overnight. One of the few times in U.S. history, Tanya, when this has happened.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next, because, of course, we see the pictures of them right there. We're expecting 20,000 National Guard troops to be deployed in Washington leading up to January 20th. You mentioned, how unusual this is. Have we ever seen anything like this on our home soil?
Well, in the past, Tanya, we've seen National Guard troops in the tens of thousands respond to various crises that the nation has faced, from, if you think back to Hurricane Katrina and some of the civil unrest and demonstrations over the summer. We saw tens of thousands of troops deployed nationwide. But to have, as our David Martin has been reporting, up to 20,000 troops being called to the nation's capital ahead of the inauguration, that is an incredible number. And I've been checking with our Pentagon team. It's typical that you have around 9,000, maybe up to 10,000 for an inauguration. Now we're talking about double that number. And this is both in response to inauguration security for next Wednesday, but also the unrest and the continued threats that remain here.
And Natalie, investigators are noticing a growing number of violent threats posted online. What do we know about some of the threats they're assessing ahead of Inauguration Day, not just there in D.C., but, all across the U.S.?
Yeah, this is something that law enforcement agencies all across the country and at all different levels, from the federal to the local, are having to investigate and look into these posts that continue online. Of course, there's questions as to whether the posts that we saw ahead of last Wednesday's attack were taken seriously enough, and what kind of security failures led to the assault at the Capitol. So now they're having to scrutinize all the various various threats online. Of course, we know that there are investigations continuing across the country in various states into the various suspects that they've identified in connection with last week's attack and riot. And then, as our Catherine Herridge has been reporting, she has learned of a new federal law enforcement bulletin that warns that the success of last week's breach could actually embolden domestic violent actors across the country. And so that is a big concern. One of the reasons we're seeing this outpouring of law enforcement respond, and everything at this point is going to be scrutinized in light of what happened here a little more than a week ago.
Natalie Brand at the Capitol, thank you so much.